All right, so we are here with Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hey, how are you guys? So great to be here.
Yes, great to
The
have you on
same,
the
yeah.
summit. We're looking forward to host you here. There's a lot of people here who are watching us, and they have a lot of questions. They're always curious about Revolut because you guys are keep on pushing and surprising everybody. You're the leader.
Yeah, the
Um,
unicorn.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to learn about Revolut Australia, but first maybe a bit about you and your background to start with.
Yeah, well, look, I had a foot in sort of traditional banking, but also challenger banking. So I just stepped out of a banking in Australia where I was the group CFO actually, and before that, head of the retail bank. And prior to that, I'd spent 10 years with Virgin and set up and
Mhm.
ran Virgin Money in Australia. So in
Wow.
a way, I feel like I've sort of perfectly placed to step into the role at Revolut. It's almost like the dream job in a lot of ways because the ambition's so great, but at the same time, they need some core banking skills and also a mindset about being entrepreneurial. And yeah, there's some real comparisons with the Virgin Group in that sense.
Amazing. And
Mhm.
tell us, maybe get us into Australia to understand the market in the last years, what's going on, and what is later we'll reach to the opportunity for Revolut. But was already out there? Describe the scene.
Yeah, I think it's probably starting with market structure. And it's part of the reason it's been so attractive for Revolut and me personally. I love the Aussie market. I think it's such a fascinating time to be in payments and banking and everything that's happening. But I think the first part is market structure, and for so long Australia has been dominated by four large incumbent banks. They hold more than 85% of market share across Australian banking. And when people talk about barriers to entry in banking, historically they've been real. So large amounts of capital, regulatory grade banking systems are generally, maybe a little bit of an apathetic public around, pretty homogenous sort of offerings and no real reason to want to switch. But what we've seen in the last few years is a regulator and a government in Australia become much more pro-competition. And I guess what we've seen is some of the things coming out of the UK actually. So, an example would be we have something called the consumer data right in Australia, very similar to open banking in the UK.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
again, they're the sort of measures that level the playing field and mean new entrants are a bit more attracted to come in. The other is a different form of banking license in Australia, what they call a restricted ADI. And again, slightly lower barriers to entry, a shorter process, and that's actually been quite successful in stimulating some new entrants coming into the market. So they're all relatively fledgling, in terms of just getting going. Most of them have just got their licenses, but as I said, I think it's a really attractive market, one we're really bullish about, and we've found it a really quite an ecosystem that is quite supportive. So if you think about the regulators, potential partners, FinTech Australia, they do a fantastic job. All that sort of network, that ecosystem there is really supportive of new entrants coming in. And as Revolut scope the Australian market, we're more highest conviction as ever around having an impact here.
Mm.
Amazing. And
Wow.
what is let's say, the target audience in Australia? What is the profile of a potential customer? Or
Yeah, I think I think we naturally, if you take the success that Revolut's had in many other markets, 12 million customers globally. They're doing something right in terms of attracting customers, and I think it naturally skews to a slightly younger audience, probably,
Mhm.
but a bit of it's attitudinal. So their willingness to leave an incumbent bank for a new offering, I think that certainly plays through the profile of customer that is attracted to us. And from Revolut's point of view, building towards a financial super app, that's something that I think has appeal sort of through a number of segments, because for so long, choice has been pretty poor in Australia. features like cryptocurrency, as an example, hasn't been super accessible. And I think the other element of the Australian psyche is a sort of value seeker. I don't know if it's because we're all originally kind of came from another country or migrants, but tend to really like a good deal. And I've launched a number of products in Australia with Virgin and now Revolut, and one thing I've learned is that Australians are pretty discerning about there being value there, and you also need to show real differentiation. And again, in Revolut's case, and this is kind of right back to when it was founded, the kind of original use case, but being able to hold and trade foreign exchange at the interbank rate was just so disruptive. So it came from that initial notion of people should be able to spend their own money abroad without paying exorbitant fees and a massive markup on foreign exchange. And I think that element has got real appeal in Australia, that, as I said, to that sort of value psyche. So to answer your question directly, I think Revolut has appeal through the segments, naturally skews a little bit younger, but quite attitudinal about being willing to adopt an alternative and that sort of early adopter mindset.
So if I'm a customer of Revolut in Australia and I'm transferring money via my Revolut app to another friend, let's say Ivo in Prague, how fast is it? What are the fees? Like, how is it working?
Yeah. The transfer is instant between Revolut customers. I think it's a real advantage of the product. It really depends what currency you wanted to send across. And again, one of the key features of the Revolut offering is being able to hold, trade and spend foreign exchange at the interbank rate with no hidden fees. So a peer-to-peer transfer like that will be free. You'll definitely be doing that at a foreign exchange rate that most others, I'd say all others, won't be able to match. I think it's probably been one of the things that's really powered the success of Revolut is the sort of network effect of the product. So if near you have the product and you want to send something to a colleague, it's just so easy to sign up and for that transfer to happen instantly. It's almost this perpetual wheel that has turned in Revolut, and as I said, contributed to pretty amazing growth over the last 5 years to the 12 million customers that we have globally now.
I see. Actually, it was one of them. My questions, like first thoughts when I was exploring Revolut Australia, and you were talking about the market, and my first question was, well, was the, let's say, process of features what you will decide is the priorities to bring to the Australian market? Because Revolut is bringing features that basically, when I'm seeing it like every day, it seems every day new things adding to the app, and it's usually available firstly in the UK and Europe. So who will decide what's the priority for the Australian customer? What you will transfer and bring to the Australian market?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Our mission is to build a financial super app, and that's unparalleled in Australia. No one else has done that, and it comes from a simple notion of you look at the home screen on your phone, and you've probably got 5 different apps for 5 different use cases, and we think there's real value in bringing that together in one platform and one destination. And as you say, a number of the features that have been so important to the success of Revolut in Europe and the UK, we have access to those. And but I think one of the lessons Revolut learned pretty early on as it launched into new markets was the importance of product market fit, and in particular getting the localization right. So what's going to appeal to the local market? What's the competitive dynamic in place? What's the right tone of voice to talk about the features? What's really going to have appeal? And in our case, we brought to market a great value proposition focused around remittance, and as I said, being able to hold trade and spend foreign exchange at the interbank rate with no hidden fees. But we also are fully committed to build towards the financial super app, and so over the next couple of months, our customers are going to see very regular feature drops of a number of new things. So, the first cab off the rank for us is going to be ability to hold and have exposure to cryptocurrency. I think typically in Australia that's been fairly inaccessible because for typically people were unsure as to how they would get exposure to an alternative asset class like crypto. It was probably quite expensive, and so I think it's a strong statement from Revolut that they're willing to move into product adjacencies that typically you wouldn't see from your bank in Australia. Not in a million years would one of the major banks offer exposure to cryptocurrency in the way we are, but that will quickly be followed by features like an ability to hold and trade gold and silver. I think during these COVID times, having exposure to some of those alternative asset classes and stores of value, I think is really really interesting. I think other things that we've sort of got on the roadmap include an app focused on a younger audience. So Revolut Junior again has been a real breakout in Europe, and I think that again that's a really underserved part of the Australian market. There's very few offerings dedicated to a younger audience, and I think that there's a important role Revolut's playing in teaching good financial habits to a younger audience as well. So I think that'll have appeal. And then other things, because I can go on and on about our roadmap, but we think it's so important to our customers to be able to give back, and so we're going to launch a donations platform. We're also looking at our rewards and making every spend that you make with Revolut a more rewarding experience. So that might take the form of cashback that we offer on our metal product, but
Sure.
Also some merchant offers and things like that. So that's really just the start for us. I think we're in such a position of strength to have access to so many great features that have been built out in Europe. We work really closely with our product teams there, and everyone's super motivated to build that product suite out to what that feature suite out to what everyone knows has been so integral to success in Europe and the UK.
So you have something like open roadmap, let's say, and communicating with community, and okay.
Yeah, and particularly our metal users. So that's sort of the top tier of our subscription product.
Yeah.
You probably got the card. I hope so.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I
there we
think
go.
they are. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be there
One of them.
somewhere. But we find our metal users are a great source of feedback for us, and that's a real community that we like to beta test our features with first, and again having a global customer base of 12 million customers in total. Wow, what a source of feedback, and we know pretty quickly when we've got it right and when we don't. So I think that's quite instructive.
That's a good point. So how many customers, maybe you mentioned it, how many customers you've got in Australia currently?
Yeah, well, we launched in beta midway through last year, and that was under a specific special license exemption that we had from the regulator. We acquired 30,000 new customers in a very short amount of time. So I think the anticipation for Revolut built quite quickly, and that gave us a lot of confidence around there was real appeal in Australia, and I'm really proud that Australia was one of Revolut's first expansion markets outside the UK and Europe, and so that was a big step, and we had to make sure we got all of our global platform working as it should for a new market like Australia. We then went through a licensing process, secured our financial services license. That landed in about May of this year, and we launched around 3 weeks ago. So, total customers for Revolut, we had quite a big waiting list that had formed up. There was about 30,000 customers on that we released as well. So, yeah, the total customer base is in that sort of range of 50,000 users, And we have an ambition to reach 1 million users or customers in Australia, and that would make us if not one of the fastest growing fintechs in Australia. And Revolut's achieved that in a number of markets. You look at Ireland as an example. Population of a bit over 5 million people. Revolut has more than 1 million customers, and so one in five Irish adults hold a Revolut product. It's quite incredible in terms of penetration.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Even here in Europe, I was just talking with my friend yesterday. He's from some village, totally outside of, my bubble. And it's like definition of sending money, or usually people will have, bank and they've got Revolut. And I don't know how, like they just got it. They have it. So the adoption here is amazing, really.
Yeah.
People don't know what fintech means, but know what Revolut means.
Exactly. Another story, actually, a friend of mine, his son got a job as a kite surfing instructor, and on the instructions when he was asked to come down was the only two things he needed to bring were his sunglasses and his Revolut card. I thought, yep, that's exactly what we want them saying. So yeah, it's become it's become the go-to, isn't it? Particularly when you're traveling.
Yeah. So later, in other market, you had like the business banking and other, stuff, right? So I guess this is coming later, right?
We again, that small end of business offering is one that we think is a great fit for the Aussie market. And Australia is really unique. There's 5 million small businesses in Australia. It's an economy that's really founded on small businesses and that SME segment overall, and typically that hasn't been really well served either. I've seen the big banks centralize lots of their support functions. Very difficult to get a relationship banker that actually is willing to talk to you, and the processes tend to be pretty clunky. Most banks invest behind their consumer proposition, leave the business one behind, but Revolut's developed a fantastic offering in the UK and Europe. We think that's going to have great resonance in Australia, and that one's definitely on the cards, and probably not that far away either.
Okay, and also we talked before on other interviews here today about the number of clicks, the number of the onboarding experience. If you can elaborate about that. How is it different in the Australian market if I want to open a bank?
Yeah, the KYC process, the onboarding,
we pride ourselves on that. And again, it's an example of being able to take global best practice and something for Revolut that I think is the gold standard. That you look at all the comparisons around number of clicks it takes to onboard with Revolut, and it's quite amazing the way that's been rationed down to such a small number, and we've been able to take the best of all of that and bring it to Australia. And this is where it's really important to be super aware of what the regulatory requirements in Australia are. And one thing we take super seriously is obviously our AML obligations and KYC in particular. And I think we've got a great blend of ensuring that on every occasion we're meeting our regulatory requirements, but making that a seamless process. And that is definitely the onboarding process, but then very quickly into things like instant provisioning of a card that could be used automatically can be loaded into Apple Pay and used. We get a lot of good feedback from our customers on that. But I think that is one of the real points of difference for Revolut, is the seamlessness of the onboarding experience, something we've invested a lot in getting right. And with that, we've been able to take the best practice from what Revolut's done globally and bring it into the Aussie context. It's one thing that a lot of friends and others have signed up, and they're kind of blown away at how easy it is to sign up for a Revolut product in Australia, and that's not the case amongst our competitors.
I guess you're running probably on the same solution on Fidu, right? The same, probably. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
we wanted to ask you about open banking in Australia. Open banking, we know how it's run in Revolut in the UK. So
Yep. Yeah, I think open banking is so in Australia it's called the consumer data right, and you know, Australia has seen it's quite early stages for us. So they've just accredited, you know, the first participants in that. You know, the early signs are quite positive in terms of the number of calls on the APIs and some of the early data around that. But I think like Europe and the UK and other places where open banking's rolled out, it tends to be a consumer adoption curve that starts slowly and then, you know, really accelerates to the point it becomes you know, something people are familiar with and you know, very open to. I think some of the nuances in Australia is the way the accreditation itself works, and I think it's fair to say that you know, lots of Australian payment operators and banks are sort of feeling their way through that a little bit at this point. But I'm really positive on the consumer data right. I think it's, you know, it's a great measure that shifts the balance of power from the major banks who typically hold all the customer data to new operators coming in who are probably the best place to identify really valuable use cases for the consumer data right actually coming to life. Because in some ways, I think account aggregation is sort of the tip of the iceberg. The real value comes in you know, payment initiation. I think in Australia, there's talk of expanding it into other utilities. So, you know, you'll be able to trigger your power bill and some other parts like that. And I think where open banking can facilitate really seamless interactions with customers. You know, the reality, you got to keep it real a bit with banking. It's you know, as much we all love talking about it. For many Australians, it can be a bit of a chore. So to the extent we can make that as seamless as possible, I think that's a real advantage. And I think open banking or the consumer data right is a real facilitator of that. I think the one really important point is that we maintain consumer confidence around the way their data is being treated. And Australia's probably, you know, stretched quite a long way to ensure that that's the case. So they have things like, you know, it's not a recurring consent that lasts forever. It has to be renewed by consumers, as an example. And that's really all designed to ensure that it stays front of mind as to where they've given their data permissions, and, you know, that's an active decision that they're making. I'm supportive of that. I think that's a good measure.
And now during COVID times, do you see maybe an opportunity, maybe here, because people, I mean, you have a very nice onboarding, right? And we said it, like you can open, I don't know how many minutes like it takes to open an account at Revolut. But how do you educate the market over there? How do you come up with a new player and communicate yourself to the Australian market, the Australians?
Yeah, I think you know, as I think about you know, the experience we've all had over the last 6 months and COVID, I think there's sort of, I think of it in two planes. On one hand, on the short term basis, it's quite disruptive, right? You know, I think about our own launch plans. Obviously, the travel use case for the Revolut product is always a strong one. Travel shut down, but what it forced us to do was think more laterally around what are the other most fertile areas where we think Revolut's really going to appeal. And, you know, a great example of that is remittances in Australia. You know, Australia is one of the most expensive markets globally for remittances. You know, the ACCC did a big study in 2018, and, you know, we were amongst the most expensive of any developed nation globally. And so they were quite active in looking at ways of bringing new entrants into the market. But the point is that, you know, Australians have been pretty underserved in that segment of the market. Yes, travel's not happening, but being a big migrant population, there's lots of remittance corridors that we're able to really service, and the global nature of the Revolut product really plays to that. I think the other element of COVID has been, we probably would have been a little bit slower to roll out additional features, adding to the Revolut product. What it inspired in us was the importance of diversifying out the feature set and finding things that we think were really going to appeal to Aussies. So we did put the foot down on, being in a position to offer commodities and exposure to gold and silver and a rewards platform and junior. It's put our teams under pressure, but it's a great thing for Aussies. And in some ways, I think if COVID hadn't been prevalent, we might not have put the foot down quite as hard. So I think that's just going to be a net positive for the business overall. And then longer term, I think the other plane, so the short term disruption, but long term, COVID is only accelerating the digitization of Australian lives. And I don't think anyone's better placed to meet that than fintech. And within that, Revolut as a subset, given, we probably haven't suffered some of the disruption others have seen around capital raisings or the like. We closed a very large capital raising a couple of weeks before COVID, or at least started it and finished it during $580 million capital raising, and geez, that just puts us in such a great position to be able to sort of really build towards this global banking platform and the financial super app. So again, I think through any crisis like the one we had, there's winners and losers, and I think Revolut's on the right side of the ledger on that one.
Amazing. Before we end, I just want to mention, of course, the Revolut Vault. That is an amazing feature that a lot of people also these days are using, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's probably another example of the types of features that have become more prevalent during COVID. So the suite of money management tools overall, you guys are both users of the product, having insights as to where you're spending your money, being able to set a budget, being able to set up a vault and use that as a way of having a kind of a goal to work towards. The roundup feature that means that small amount below certain amounts that you spend gets allocated to an account. I have that on. I've built that up. I call it my kind of little cycling account that I keep tucked away that just builds up over time, and it's amazing how quickly it gets there. And I think during COVID, people are really focused on ensuring that that where they're putting their money is the best possible place, and if Revolut can help them on that, achieved.
That's interesting. So do you have some, let's say, insight of how let's say average person in Australia, and what his favorite feature, and compared to Revolut user in the UK or Europe? Like, let's say you were talking about the PFM, right? That's probably a very important feature, and money spending, budgeting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think again, Revolut globally is almost like a pulse of the way consumers are behaving, and we've worked pretty actively with lots of the governments around the world to provide them with the data around look what's happening in the economy. That we saw during particularly April as COVID really bit. Domestic spend just contracted massively. People weren't going out. There wasn't a lot of spend, but post that, we've really seen that bounce back as restrictions have been lifted and people start to more actively spend, including particularly in Europe, travel coming back online as well. So it's interesting. That's pretty consistent across many of the markets that we operate in, but it is a bit of a function of of the level of restrictions that are in place. Australians has had a few more reimposed as we've gone through a second wave, and that shows up in the data a little bit as well. But as I said, I think if we can do our part in terms of helping identify some of those patterns, and if that informs the way governments respond, I think that's a good thing. But yeah, as I said, it's a bit like being the pulse, having access to that sort of consumer spending data in particular.
So by the way, where are your offices? Or I guess you're working from home, right? Still, or is it Melbourne or okay?
Yeah, our office is in Melbourne, but it's been a really interesting period because everyone has worked remotely.
Yeah.
You know, when I first signed with Revolut to join, we had 3 people.
3 people.
In fact, yeah, 3 people, and in fact, Revolut had 6 million customers globally at that point. Fast forward to when I actually joined in February, we were at 10 million, and I think we're now 12 million. So quite incredible. But the point of telling you that was that during this period, we've had to scale the Australian business in terms of a number of things, onboarding key members of our team, and there's a number of team members that I've never met in person that we sourced, we interviewed, onboarded. They're working remotely. But they're as important and as massive contributors to the team, and they've never met most of their colleagues in person, so it's just a strange dynamic. And then the other was actually bringing the product to market, and as I said, we launched 2 or 3 weeks ago, and again, most of our team hadn't been together in one office for 4 or 5 months, and we took that product from inception to launch in that period, and again, what a unique thing to be involved in, and to have the success that we've had in terms of real momentum as we've launched and got going. It's a great thing for our team in Australia.
Nice.
Great. Thank you for your time, Matt. We are both really passionate about Revolut, and you keep on surprising us all over the world and serving so many customers every day, every transaction. And of course, the cards and all your creativity and everything that you do inspire us, and I think inspire the whole industry, if I can say.
Absolutely.
That was really important for us to start the summit with this conversation. And of course, big lesson here in opening a new market. I'm sure you had to talk to the regulators. I'm sure you had to, build up the site over there. So I think it's possible for other nations that are getting services like Revolut today in a top notch of the services. It's amazing. Good luck with the launch. If we're gonna have more updates during the summit or more features or more, things, of course, feel free to share because a lot of people here are really excited about the launch of Revolut in Australia. By the way, you launched with the new UI, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was perfect timing for us, actually. We had the app redesign happen virtually at the same time as Australia went to market, so we were able to take advantage of all of that, and our customers loved it.
Amazing. Okay, so thank you very much, and good luck from all of us here on the team.
Awesome, guys. I really enjoyed talking to you. Good luck with the summit as well, and I'll be tuned in for the whole.
That's great.
That'll be awesome.
Thank you.